Alrighty, how's it going, mages? It is going to be a very chill night indeed. Um, so this was something that I kind of planned for a couple weeks, and now that I'm like here doing it, I'm like, hmm, I don't know how to think of it. So here's something that something unique that I want to do, is that I want to start doing some fan fiction. I thought reading some kind of silly fan fiction would like be like a very interesting idea. But I don't know what to do for it. And one of the things I wanted to read through was Fallout Equestria. And that's because for that have seen my uh them's fighting herds playthrough. Yeah, I'm a brony, and I really like My Little Pony, and I really loved everything about it. I loved the fantasy element of MLP. And I stumbled across Fallout Equestria like not too long after I became involved with the fandom. And I read about a third of the main story. Kind of fell off it. I don't know why. Has nothing to do with the story. Like I just stopped reading. So I kind of want to see if I can go back into it and read it in its entirety. And I thought it would be a very interesting idea to read that as part of a stream. So let's do that. Let's just take this night to just read a couple of chapters, see how far we can get to it. And I've already set up the layout for it. Let's see if I could switch to it. Yeah, there we go. So I already have it open. I'm on Film Fiction, set to Fallout Equestria. So for those that don't know, Fallout Equestria is, as the name implies, a fanfiction between Fallout and My Little Pony. The concept is, what if the world of My Little Pony just had the rules of Fallout? What if Equestria was this post-apocalyptic wasteland that had raiders and the equivalent to the Brotherhood of Steel, ghouls, how the radiation, like how radiation works is similar, rad roaches, like pretty much the lore of Fallout into MLP. And it goes into this one story of this one little pony, who is nothing so special, but turns out to be a very special survivor pony indeed. So let's go right into it. Let's start with Fallout Equestria by this one individual or group named Kkat. So I'm on the page, and the cover for it says Fallout with ponies. Set in an alternate future, one pony must learn to survive in a blasted, poisoned land, and possibly, with the aid of friends made along the way, bring new light into the darkness of post-apocalyptic Equestria. This is a very long fanfiction. I don't know if it was confirmed, but this is like one of the longest fanfictions, like ongoing fanfictions that has ever been made in like in its recent history, or like in its recent I think in the fandom as a whole. So let's jump right into it. And I'll be providing some music. This is some music that I thought would be appropriate for this setting. I think it's fine to use. And hold on, I just got a message. I just got I just got a text from my cousin. It was his birthday very recently, and I decided to get him the audio the audio book version of the novelization of the Uncharted movie. We went to see the Uncharted movie not too long ago. Well, when it came out, actually. and we were like, wow, this movie is good. and I'm like, okay, yeah, what a nice gift to give. I think it's mostly because the audiobook is voiced by Nolan North, which makes it valuable. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, dude. All right, so we're gonna start Fallout Equestria. Let's go. I'm gonna start. Actually, after the introduction, I'll start some music off. So, introduction. Once upon a time, in the magical land of Equestria, there came an era when the ideals of friendship gave way to greed, selfishness, paranoia, and a jealous reaping of dwindling space and natural resources. Lands took up arms against their neighbors. The end of the world occurred much as we had predicted. The world was plunged into an abyss of balefire and dark magic. The details were trivial and pointless. The reasons, as always, purely our own. The world was nearly wiped clean of life. A great cleansing. A magical spark struck by pony hooves quickly raged out of control. Mega spells rained from the skies. Entire lands were swallowed in flames and fell beneath the boiling oceans. Ponykind was almost extinguished, their spirits becoming part of the ambient radiation that blanketed the lands. A quiet darkness fell across the world. But it was not as some had predicted, the end of the world. Instead, the apocalypse was simply the prologue for another bloody chapter in pony history. In the early days, thousands were spared the horrors of the Holocaust by taking refuge in enormous underground shelters known as stables. When they emerged, they only had the hell of the wastes to greet them. All except those in Stable 2. And for on that fateful day when spellfire rained from the sky, the steel door of Stable 2 swung closed and never reopened. So that's a pretty good like intro of things to come. So if you're familiar with Fallout, that's pretty much the idea. It's people just took war a little bit too hard. Things got nuts. Things got radiated. Things got too hot. And everyone eventually just decided to escape into vaults. That's pretty much it. It's just a vault. So we're going to go into not vault, but stable 2. And let's go into it. All right, and now for this, I'm going to start providing some music. I'm going to provide some ambient noise in the background. Hopefully it's not too loud. I tried to test this before. Some music that's provided. This is some background music produced by the Wasteland Whalers. It's a group of people that made music for some projects related to this fanfiction. Found their SoundCloud. I hope it's fine. I'm sure it's fine to use. So I'm gonna just put some stuff in the background. Let's see. If I can find which one I want to use. Here we go. All right. And I think that's fine. All right, let's start. Prologue of Pip-Bucks and Cutie Marks. If I'm going to tell you about the adventure of my life, explain how I got to this place with these people, and why I did what I'm going to do next, I should probably start by explaining a little bit about Pip-Bucks. What is a Pip-Buck? A Pip-Buck is a device, worn on the foreleg, just above the hoof, issued to every pony in a stable, when they become old enough to start work. A blending of unicorn pony magic and science, your Pip-Buck will keep a constant measure of your health and even help administer healing policies and other medicine, track and organize everything in your saddle packs, assist in repairs, and keep all manner of notes and maps available at a hoof tap. Plus, it allows you to listen to the stable broadcast whenever you would like, as it could tune in and decrypt just about any radio frequency. And that's not all. A pony's pit buck generates an EFS, an eyes forward sparkle that will indicate direction and help gauge whether the ponies or creatures around you are hostile. And, perhaps most impressively, a pit buck can magically aid you in a fight for brief periods of time through use of the SATs, the Sable Tech Arcane Targeting Spell. Oh, and a feature not to be forgotten, it can keep track of the location of tagged objects or people, including the wearers of other pit bucks. So if a pony somehow got lost, don't ask me how you could get lost in a stable, but it does happen on occasion, then any pony who knew the lost pony's tag could help them instantly. It can even be made to glow like a lamp. So yes, pit bucks are really our testament to unicorn pony arcane science. And yes, having a pit buck is a big advantage. So with how wonderful and miraculous all that just sounded, it's hard to impress upon ponies who never lived in a stable just how ordinary, how pedestrian a pit buck was in the eyes of the ponies living in stable 2. And that's why I was disappointed to have one as my cutie mark. Every pony in stable 2 had a pit buck. All that stuff I mentioned, most ponies don't even have half of that. They just use it to tune into the stable broadcast. Listen to the sweet, sweet voice of Velvet Remedy in the evenings, or in the latest school singing competitions during the day. The stable had 2 soccer leagues, one which allowed SATs, one that prohibited it. Otherwise, most ponies paid their pit bucks almost no attention at all. The Overmare issues each pony with their own pit buck on the day of their cutie mark party, usually a day or 2 after you get your cutie mark on your flanks, that tells every pony what makes you special, what you're destined to be good at. Once it shows, the Overmare knows what work to assign you, and you know your place in the stable. So no, I was not thrilled that what made me special was something that every pony had, which is like being told I wasn't special at all. Sure, getting a pit buck as my cutie mark could have meant I was destined to become an awesome pit buck repair filly or something, but in reality it was like getting a cutie mark of a cutie mark. And it didn't help that I was just the last pony to get her cutie mark. Not surprising in retrospect. Kind of tough to find what you're supposed to be good at when you're... Wait, hold on. Kind of tough to find what you're supposed to be good at when what you're supposed to be good at is something you don't get until you found what you're supposed to be good at. So I tried everything. I even tried to invent new things. As a unicorn pony myself, my innate magics allow me a level of fine manipulation that Earth ponies don't enjoy. Any pony can hold a key in their teeth and open a lock, but using multiple tools in a very delicate operation? That requires precision levitation. So I decided to learn to pick locks with a bobby pin and a screwdriver. And I was even getting pretty good at it. Unfortunately, it didn't get me my cutie mark, it just got me into more trouble. I even, to my humiliation, went through the Kkat, the cutie mark aptitude test, in hopes it would guide me to what makes me special. But no, my Kkat was utterly average, with only marginally higher scores in a couple of areas, indicating that I might be suited for work as a pit buck technician or a stable loyalty inspector. 2 options I should note were even less impressive when you consider that it was generally expected that unicorn ponies that would go into either technical or administrative work. That is, except unicorn ponies who are natural artists like Velvet Remedy. As I said before, our inherent magic allows us the sort of fine manipulation that technical work demands. Likewise, the Overmare and her government were always unicorn ponies. It is the Overmare's unicorn magic, after all, that creates the false sunlight used to grow our underground apple orchard. And while our apples might not look like those beautiful red things that grow in old books, they are what keep us alive. It was only because they let me try my hooves at both positions that I gained access to a pit buck before receiving my own. Otherwise, I might never have gotten my cutie mark. Oh, and my name is Little Pip. Go figure. I was given the name because I was the youngest and the smallest, and even my mother had the good sense to not call me Pipsqueak. Not that I don't love her, but when a filly's cutie mark is a glass of hard apple cider, Anyways, funny how names like that turn out sometimes, you know? It's pleased to meet you. And here is my story. So, that's a lot. Okay, so we're going to assume we're just going to assume knowledge that everyone here knows Fallout and what Fallout is and how it works. So we don't need to explain what a Pip-Boy is and how vaults work, right? But I kind of want to explain it anyway. So, Pip-Boy, I think everyone knows what Pip-Boy is. Vaults, underground shelters, you stay there forever for the rest of your life. That's supposed to be how it goes. Unless Vault-Tec decides to make it a social experiment. Most vaults were designed to be social experiments. They're designed to fuck you over. Some vaults were designed to keep people in. This one is a normal vault or a normal stable. Let's assume that. And yeah, unicorn ponies, because they have magic, they are more in tune with being either a very technical person, or they could be a very beautiful or creative singer, like Velvet Remedy. It's always one of the two. They're either very talented, like technical, or they are creative. That's pretty much it. So we have Little Pip. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, back to it. Back to it. So we're going to start with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Out of the Stable. Because in Stable 2, no pony ever enters, and no pony ever leaves. Gray. The walls of the maintenance stalls were all a very monotonous, dull gray. The particular wall I was staring at had the merit of being a very clean gray. Pip bucks were notoriously hardy and reliable, so being the stable's pip buck technician meant that there were long periods of nothing to do. Being the pip buck technician's apprentice meant that I was assigned in all the mundane daily chores, while my trainer took extended naps in the back room. Chores like cleaning the walls. This wall needs a mural. I let myself fantasize, picturing the Overmare agreeing and ordering Palette herself to turn our entire stall into one of her brightly colorful masterpieces. Palette was the greatest painter in Stable 2, and like every skilled artist, that made her a stable treasure. Life in Stable 2 inevitably began to eat at your spirits. You were born in the stable, you lived your whole life in the stable, and you were going to die there. And of course, your life was largely laid out for you to see by your cutie mark party. So the Overmare insisted that a new song be added to the stable's broadcast repertoire each week. That public areas were brightly painted and adored with uplifting and motivational murals, that regular parties were planned at the atrium, all in an effort to distract and starve off depression. Reality came crashing back as I stared at the eternally blank gray. Beautifying maintenance areas was tragically low priority anyway, and the Pip-Buck technician stall was one of the least trafficked parts of maintenance. I felt my ears droop as I started to realize that I'd be staring at this same gray wall nearly every day for the rest of my life. Oh dear, is it really that bad? And there she was, Velvet Remedy, the gorgeous charcoal-coated unicorn with streaks of color in her white mane, with a voice as smooth as silk and rich as finest chocolate, was standing in the doorway of my stall. I felt immediately grateful that I had finished the cleaning and simultaneously ashamed that the room was so beneath her. I couldn't believe that she was just standing there. I'd seen her on the stage above us at late parties. I'd listened to her songs incessantly, recording every one on my Pip-Buck so that I don't have to wait to hear it again. I'll admit it now, I had a huge crush on Velvet Remedy for years. Me and at least 300 other ponies. My mother used to laugh at that. "Little Pip," she would say, chortling with her friends. "Velvet Remedy's barn door doesn't swing that way." It took me a couple of years to understand what my mother meant by that. And it took me several seconds to process that Velvet Remedy just asked me something. What? Huh? Yep. Wonderful response, little Pip. So elegant. I wanted to dig my way through the concrete floor and just pull the chunks over on top of me. She smiled sweetly. She smiled at me, and in the amazing voice. "Oh, you look so heartbroken when I came in. Is there something I can do?" Velvet Remedy offered to help me. I was shocked back to my senses. Velvet Remedy must have some reason to be down here. Some Pip-Buck reason, I guess. It wasn't like she would just go wandering around maintenance after all. Looking around, I realized that I was the only pony on duty. My teacher, as usual, asleep in his office. Oh, no, it was nothing. I tried to regain composure. How may I be of assistance? Velvet Remedy's expression was both compassionate and unconvinced. But she lifted a forehoof, raising her Pip-Buck up to my gaze, a more elegant model than mine, with her initials and cutie mark, a beautiful bird with wings outstretched and beak opened in song, embellishing it tastefully. "Oh, I hate to be a bother, but it's begun to chafe. Could you replace the padding?" "Oh, absolutely." I was already levitating the special keys used to unlock a Pip-Buck from a pony's foreleg. As an apprentice Pip-Buck technician, I had all manner of special precision tools in the pockets of my utility barding. "I'll have it done in right quick." The Pip-Buck came off with a lock. Velvet Remedy chuckled hesitantly, lowering her hoof. Oh no, it's all right. Take your time. I'm going to put some salve on this leg back in my room and rest up for the afternoon. Ah, that's right. Velvet Remedy was performing at the Stable 2 Saloon tomorrow night. I would have to polish it up to make it worthy of being worn on above her hoof. If I spent all night on it, I could give it a full tune-up, have it running as smoothly as the day she got it, and still have it back to her before the show. Alright, I'll have it back to you by this time tomorrow. You won't be disappointed, I promise. She smiled at me again, and all the gray in the world couldn't darken my day. Oh, thank you. And then she turned to go. I watched as her cutie mark. I watched as her cutie mark disappeared around the doorway, and then she was gone. All right, how are we doing so far? So yeah, this idea just came out of nowhere all of a sudden. Like 2 weeks back, I'm like, I should have like some kind of chill night. And this was like the first thing that came to mind. And I'm like, this sounds like a pretty interesting idea. Like, not a bad idea. Alright. The next day, I was whistling one of Velvet Remedy's songs as I walked down the halls towards her room. Her Pip-Buck was hovering along beside me in a field of magical levitation, freshly padded with the best lining I could find, looking shiny and new. I was tired from a long night of work, but in high spirits. Velvet Remedy was going to be so happy with my work. Turning the corner, I was startled out of my reverie by the massive ponies gathered outside Velvet Remedy's room. Damn, I'm gonna have to battle my way through hoof print seekers and paparazzi, levitating the Pip-Buck higher. I started to shove my way into the crowd. Oh, she's gone! How should she leave? Oh shit, that's crazy! The hushed voices and panic whinnies around me grew alarming. Why would she abandon us? Gone? Velvet Remedy was gone? And then the words that stopped me cold. I didn't think the stable door could open. What? She was gone outside? Don't worry, every pony, boomed the voice of the overmare from somewhere in the crowd. I have the tag of each and every pony in the stable. I will personally send out a rescue party. We'll have our velvet back by the end of the day, worry not. Felt I was drowning in cold, wet cement. My gaze slowly moved up towards the Pip-Buck floating above me. Oh, I lowered my head, slowly trying to back out of the crowd, curling the floating Pip-Buck close. When the overmare brought up Velvet Remedy's tag, it would lead every pony not to Velvet, but to her Pip-Buck sitting in maintenance. With a thump, I backed into some pony, startling me enough that the levitation field evaporated in a poof, and the clean and shiny Pip-Buck clattered to the floor. Turning, I found myself eye to eye with the overmare. Hey, Smello Drinks Glue, how's it going? She didn't speak, her gaze turning to the Pip-Buck on the ground, Velvet Remedy's initials and cutie mark clearly visible. What is this? The overmare spoke slowly, dangerously. All eyes turned on me. I could feel every pair of eyes. Nobody spoke. The silence bore down like a lead blanket. My mouth went dry. I couldn't find my voice. I didn't need to. I could feel the wave of loathing. Dozens of Velvet Remedy fan ponies, and I was a pony holding the reason why their idol was lost to them. The overmare's voice was slow and surprisingly gentle. Take it and go to your room swiftly. She didn't need to tell me twice. So you're like, oh shit, that's crazy. Someone left the vault. So it's like if you played Fallout 3, it's pretty much that. It's like, oh shit, who would have thought the vault could open? That's crazy. Who could even think that the vault could even open in the first place? It's kind of nuts. I'm gonna need some water. Alright, let's go back into it. Sorry if if the screen keeps flashing here. I'm like switching between windows to change the music. Okay. I lay on my bed that evening, poking at Velvet Remedy's pickbook as the radio in my own played yet another iteration of the tragedy of that day. I couldn't believe it. Velvet Remedy was gone. I couldn't understand. How could she leave? Why would she go? The door of Stable 2 was... The door out of Stable 2 was closed and sealed. Only the Overmare knew the secrets to opening it. Assuming it could even be it could even be open. Which obviously it could. But why? Nobody really knew what was outside, if there was anything out there at all. Historical books suggested the world outside was blasted, lifeless, and poisonous. That was at least the common and logical assumption. But a ghost story some pony told at my first and only slumber party had given me horrible nightmares and still lurked in the shadows of my head. A tale of a pony who somehow got the stable door opened and stepped outside, only to find out that there was no outside. Just a great nothingness that whisked the pony away, devouring her soul so that she was nothingness too. Empirically, I knew that wasn't the case, but the mental image just still haunted me. The two things I did understand was that Velvet Remedy had gotten me to remove her pip-book so the Overmare couldn't track her with it. And that I was screwed. Being the smallest pony my age and the last to get my cutie mark did not facilitate building friendships with my peer ponies. Mother honestly didn't help either, nor did waking up screaming at my first slumber party, so I was used to being alone. But I never had enemies before. I'd been underneath the notice of other ponies, but I never had one to hate me. I really couldn't blame them either. Even though it wasn't totally fair. Just wasn't fair. They were upset and hurt and needed a scapegoat. The news hadn't mentioned me by name, just Velvet Remedy's custom decorated pip-book was found in the possession of a pip-book technician pony, but with a whole two of us, so it wasn't hard for any pony to figure out, even without the scene of outside her room earlier. The Overmare was speaking on the radio. "We are all feeling this loss, but I want to remind every pony that Velvet Remedy chose to do this. She chose to leave her home, to abandon us, her family. She betrayed my trust and she betrayed yours, just as she betrayed the trust of the pony who she tricked into removing her pip-book, ensuring we could not find her. I know many of you are angry or hurt, and I urge you to direct that anger where it truly belongs." As thankful as I was for her words, it wasn't going to change the resentment that I faced that day. Even if every pony kept it to themselves, it hung in the air like old smoke. I distracted myself with the errant pip-book, taking notes of an encrypted file. I had it spotted yesterday, figuring it was probably an unfinished new song. I didn't want to open it then, but out of respect for Velvet Remedy's privacy and the dislike of spoilers. But I guess it didn't matter anymore. The song would never be played. Opening a pouch in my utility barding, I withdrew an access tool that will allow me to remove the encryption safely and easily. It was a sound file, so I played it. "The override code for opening the door to Stable 2 is CMC3BFF. I shot up in surprise at what I heard. Swiftly, I turned off the radio and I played it again. I didn't recognize the voice. It was female, kind of sweet, and had a strange accent that didn't sound like anybody in the stable. But I now knew how Velvet Remedy left. I must have sat there for hours contemplating on what I should do. Finally, I made my choice. I was going to go outside after her. I was going to bring her back. So yeah, that's kind of nuts. Kind of nuts. When I was playing Fallout back in the day for like the first couple of times, I was so like immersed in the world around Fallout. Just reading all the notes and audio logs I can find, and trying to figure out what happened to the specific area or what happened to this vault was a very interesting thing. It was just really interesting, and that was like that's like what made Fallout like one of my favorite games at the time. Before I realized that it was actually, you know, very old and dated. Like the game design was very dated, but the world building itself was actually pretty good for 3 and New Vegas. So yeah, just something funny, something like interesting that to bring up. Okay, let's keep going. I stood there, staring at the huge steel door that sealed Stable 2 away from the horrors, or nothingness, outside. And at the 2 guard ponies who blocked my way, I had my saddlebags packed with apples and necessities. Even a big book of arcane sciences for something to read. I had 2 canteens around my neck, and I was ready to go. But the Overmare was making sure that there were no follow-up acts. Insistence and glowering looks weren't getting me anywhere. My horn was glowing, but they stood their ground, unimpressed. They weren't going to let me anywhere near the control panel. Hey, aren't you the filly who let our velvet get lost outside anyway? One of the guards inquired daringly, taking a bullying step forward. The other guard looked away in disgust. I'm not sure if he was disgusted at me or if he felt like the Overmare seemed to about ponies wanting to take it out on me. I was kind of hoping it was the former, considering what I was about to do with them. Thud. The metal footlocker above them dropped onto their heads, knocking both out cold. Earth ponies. They never see that levitating something up behind you trick coming. Dumb Earth ponies. I was at the controls, entering the passcode from Velvet Remedy's Pip-Buck, when the Overmare's voice boomed through the nearby speakers. Stop! I order you to stop this instant! Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Guards, I want every guard pony at Stable 2 door. Stop that filly! Ah, crap. My hooves flew up to the main switch for the door, and I prayed to Celestia that the code worked. Then, with all my strength, I threw the switch. A loud clanging filled the air, followed by a hissing of steam, and a great rumble that shook the room. As I watched, the massive bolt that held the door from Stable 2 slid back. A huge hinge arm swung open, attaching itself to the door. With a teeth-hurting squeal, pulled the massive steel door out and away. Randomly, I found myself thinking in my mother's voice, Stable 2's barn door doesn't swing that way. The door to Stable 2 wasn't supposed to swing at all. Even though I threw the switch, I was stunned to see it actually open. You don't have to do this, little Pip, is it? The Overmare's voice kicked at me out of my stupor. I can hear the hooves of galloping guards drawing near. I took a step towards the door. Don't worry, I'll bring her back. No, you won't. If you leave here, you'll never be let back in. And for a moment, the unfairness stung. The Overmare was willing to send out a search party to bring Velvet Remedy back. But then, Velvet was special, and, I was not. But part of me wanted to turn back right there, crawl back to my room, and my dreary but safe life. Drawing myself up, I stepped out the door. With a final hiss and clang, the steel door of Stable 2 closed irrevocably behind me. I know the word. My mouth does not want to make the sounds. I don't know what I expected to find just beyond the door, but it certainly wasn't this long, dark hallway that smelled of rotting timbers and sulfur air. I was no longer in the stable, but I wasn't outside yet either. I was in limbo. I turned on my pitbuck's light and recoiled with a gasp at the skeletons of long-dead ponies which littered the hall. The outside of the stable door was marred from where ponies had slammed on it until their hooves cracked and shattered, trying to get in. Moving forward quickly, I discovered that the hallway opened into an old room with stairs leading up to a horizontal door with a shattered lock. The entrance from the outside world into Stable 2 had been cleverly disguised as the door to a humble apple cellar. And by disguised, I meant that the person who built it had been building an apple cellar. Taking a deep breath, I trotted up the stairs, swung open the cellar door, and stepped outside. And with that, we are now out into the wasteland. And I like these little footnotes. You leveled up. You got a new perk. You chose this perk. Cherchez la Filly. 10% damage to the same sex and unique dialogue options with certain ponies. At the time, I always thought that kind of perk was like not that useful, but it was especially useful if you get the perk for dealing more damage to guys, because most of the enemies are guys. But it was actually really hilarious that in New Vegas, if you choose the same sex perk that does damage to the same sex, your character becomes canonically gay, and you get access to just hitting on other people of the same gender. All right, we're now out into the wastes. And before we go any further, let's go ahead and move on to a different track. Great. Okay. So now we're in Chapter 2. Equestrian Wasteland. What world do you live in? Out here in the real world, blood flows, little pony. Blood flows. Nothingness. My first several seconds outside were a heart-bursting eternity of hoof-pounding terror. The story had been right. All that was outside was a great black nothingness. It surrounded me, suffocating. If I had been able to draw a breath, I would have screamed. and then in my eyes started to adjust to the darkness. I began to calm, gasping, feeling weak, and not just a little foolish. In my defense, I had never experienced night before. Not really. Sure, I'd always turn off the lights before curling into bed, but that darkness was small, confined to my little room, and there was always the glow from under the door. The hall of lights of Stable 2 were eternal. This was different. A cool air, quite unlike anything within the stable. I tickled my coat and chilled my skin underneath. It bore smells that were dank and rotting, rusty, dusty, and alien. I can hear the sounds of night insects, creaking of wood, and a far-off sloshing. But I was struck more by what I couldn't hear. The constant low hum of the stable's generators and the ever-present high whine of the lights were gone. So powerful in their absence that I first mistook the outside as silent. I could feel dirt and broken stone underneath my hooves, so unlike the smooth and sterile floors I had trotted all my life. And though I could not see much or far, I could see further than I had ever seen before. And there were no walls to mark the end of the room. I was staring into a horizontal abyss that stretched out from me in every direction. An entirely new panic began to form within me. My hind legs went out from under me, and I sat, stunned. I turned my gaze into the ground, breathing deeply, thanking it not only for holding me up, but being a visual endpoint. Then I made the mistake of looking up into the sky, and the absolute endless upness of it sent my head spinning and my stomach churning. Lurching. Great masses of clouds rolled over most of the sky, but there were gaps through which soft light poured, and through those I could see the up and went on forever. Insanely, I thought of the clouds as a great net made to catch me if I fell from the earth into the yawning gulf above. But if I slipped through the holes, I would just fall up forever. I clenched my eyes shut and tried to keep from vomiting. The fear and queasiness was intense but passing. Once my faculties returned, I began to notice those things that had escaped me in my initial panic. The surrounding terrain was becoming evident. The world around me did not stretch out evenly. The ground heaved and rolled, hills creeping towards mountains. The earth was punctured by the up-thrusting black fingers of long-dead trees. Along distant hilltops, I could see the swaying, leaf-shrouded branches of healthier woods. But the living trees near Stable 2 were few, scattered, and sickly. Second, I noticed that my pip-buck was flashing with a host of alerts. The map maker was already beginning to do its work on my new and unfamiliar surroundings, and to my surprise, had already pulled the label from the ether. Sweet Apple Acres. Turning around to get my bearings, my eyes were drawn to the large, hollowed husk of what I assumed had been a magnificent house. Now it creaked and swayed in the breeze as if threatening to collapse. Looking to my pip-buck again, I noticed that it was picking up several radio transmissions. The radio broadcast from Stable 2 was dark, but new stations had taken its place. My heart leapt, for it was the first indication that there still might be pony life out here after all. I nudged my pip-buck to start playing the first station on the list. Still sealed up. There's no way inside, my son. He ate one of the apples from those damned apple trees up near the stable, and now he's terribly sick. Too sick to move. We've holed up in the cistern near the old memorial. We're running out of food and medical supplies. Please, if some pony hears us, help us. Hello? Is there any pony out there? Please, we need help. I was bringing my family up to the stable near Sweet Apple Acres when we were attacked by raiders. Only my son and I survived. We made it to the stable, but it's sealed up. There's no way inside, my son. He ate one of the apples from those damn apple trees up near the stable, and now he's terribly sick. Too sick to move. We've holed up the cistern near the old memorial, and we're running out of food and medical supplies. Please, if any pony hears us, help us. Hello. A voice filled with a terrible resignation, as if the pony had already given up hope and was just going through the motions. Shaken, I turned it off. I didn't think I could bear to hear it again. That is when I noticed the soft ticking from my pit buck. Checking it over, I discovered that its radiation detector, a feature I had never known to be used, had self-activated. The cute little rainbow dial had always been planted firmly in the green. It was still there, but edging discreetly towards the yellow. I couldn't just stand here beside what had long ago been the door to a simple apple cellar for the rest of my life. Well, I could, but it would be a relatively short and miserable life. A realization was dawning on me. With so many directions to go, what was the likelihood that I would choose the path that Velvet Remedy had followed? Even though that she only had a few hours a head start, the prospect of finding her was bleak. But I had to start somewhere, and the best chance I had was to get up high and have a look around. The ruins near me rose higher than any of the nearby trees, and the sheared off roof of its upper tower was probably the best vantage point I could hope for. I closed my eyes, steadied myself, and went inside. All right, you're doing good so far. I'm like, I'm wearing a set of headphones right now. It's inside the hoodie, and I think it's because of the hoodie. It's like shaking a bit in here. It's not like staying on right, so I keep like adjusting. One of the things that, like, one of the reasons I had for reading this too was, so I like to play RPGs, and for this channel I like to play a lot of, JRPGs. I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy and stuff, and one of my favorite things to do with those types of games is to read the dialogue or read the notes, read whatever. And I thought, okay, yeah, this would be a nice vocal exercise to read the dialogue, read the notes. And that's pretty much what I'm doing here too. I like to read this as part of a vocal exercise, same thing. But it's actually difficult. Like, I'm already getting very tired. Very much tired. But I'll keep trying. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to do like a couple more chapters. Maybe one more. Okay. What was left of the Sweet Apple Acres building proved sturdier than it looked or sounded. It was also almost barren. Anything of value that had survived had been looted, leaving only scraps that nobody wanted, but that time itself seemed unable to erase. Rusted shoes, boxes of soaps for cleaning dresses that no longer existed, a pitchfork with a shattered handle, a rake. I began up the stairs. My eyes were alerted to a feeble glow, the soft green color of a poisoned apple, bathing the room above. The glow came from the screen of an old terminal, a device of arcane science identical to the ones used throughout Stable 2. It seemed miraculous that it still worked after centuries on the outside. When Stable Tech built something, they built it to last. Curiosity lured me to it, and my wonder was quickly replaced with understanding. It was no coincidence that this particular terminal was live, for on it was a fresh message. To any pony who has left Stable 2 in search of me, please, go home. I am doing what I have to do. The Overmare understands, even if she can never agree, and I hope one day you will too. I will not be back. Do not look for me. Do not endanger yourself for my sake. Please forgive me. Velvet Remedy. I searched the terminal for more, but all the other messages were ancient and corrupted save for one. And that one had a particular unique encryption, something that I had heard of but never seen before. A binary encryption, such that in order to decrypt it, I would first have to download the message into my pipbook from both the terminal which had been used to send it and the one upon it which was received. Having nothing better to do with the vast amounts of storage of my pipbook was capable of, I downloaded it. In reality, I knew that the chances that I would ever come across the companion terminal, much less that it would be functional, were overwhelmingly against me. Nor I have any reason to believe that a message centuries old would be of any significance. More importantly, I now had to face the outside. The outside was my new home, and even if I found Velvet Remedy, it was unlikely that she would accompany me back. I'll admit I had been subtly entertaining a fantasy where the Overmare would be so delighted with Velvet's return that she would embrace us both back into the herd. Maybe even throw us a party. But now, I was forced to admit how foolish that vision was. Thinking upon this made my head fill with black clouds, but as I reached the top of the ruins and looked out over the wasteland, a bright light, feeble as it was, flickered in that darkness. Just as the light from the campfire, not a half-hour trots distant, poked an orange hole in the night. As I approached the circle of firelight, I knew something was off. Something about the way the dusty beige unicorn was laying on his mat of straw, legs curled up under him. Some tenseness in his body language. But it wasn't until I stepped hoof into the light and got a good look, a warm hello dying on my lips, that I saw he was gagged, and caught the glint of the flames against a few exposed links in the chains binding his hooves. Well, looky here. Walked up all nice and pleasant, didn't she? A large earth pony emerged from the shadows of a nearby rock. His hoof clacked metallically against the rocky ground, shod in cruelly spiked pony shoes. Two more ponies slid out of hiding on opposite sides. One another earth pony holding a shovel whose blade has been lethally sharpened, and the other a unicorn whose glowing horn levitated towards me, an instrument of wood and metal with two barrels. Each pony wore barding made from thick hide. Much like Knight, I had never seen a firearm before, save for pictures and books, but those books were more than explicit enough for me to recognize the mortal threat. The bound unicorn on the mat shook his head with a sad yet derisive look and began trying to scrape the gag away from the with a forehoof. No longer making effort to keep the chain secret, the three ponies menacing me spared him only the occasional glance. What might as well have dressed herself up for us, the gun-wielding unicorn snickered, then addressing me. You wouldn't mind, would you? Laughter. And another unicorn too. And another unicorn too. She'll fetch a pretty price, this one. Fetch a price for what? From whom? The one holding the shovel spear in his mouth mumbled something incomprehensible. Then, apparently deciding the gun was a sufficient deterrent, spat out his weapon and reiterated, "By the gun, I mean, look at her. I think she's taking a bath." I was suddenly and bizarrely aware of how filthy all four of the ponies were, and how foul they smelled. I managed to cover a gag with a sneeze. What's going on?" I asked. Of the emotions battling for supremacy in my head, confusion had clawed its way to victory. The captive unicorn finally succeeded in pulling the filthy gag free. "They're slavers, you idiot." Monterey Jack. The dirty beige unicorn with dour expression and a cutie mark that looked like cheese. Followed behind me as we trudged alongside our captors, walking a broken path that was once a road. My legs were in chains, making walking difficult, and anything more speedy than a trot impossible. My pit buck had stymied the slavers' efforts to bind my forelegs, eventually forcing them to chain me above the knees. Had the one with the shovel spear not been holding its point dangerously against my throat, the other two would have gotten a few hooves to tender places for their efforts. As it was, they made short work of me. I was not gagged, but Monterey had convinced me early that unnecessary chatter from the slaves-to-be would likely result in the loss of my tongue. Not that I had much to say to these brutes anyway, aside from my repertoire of colorful metaphors. I didn't expect that they would answer my questions, even if my tongue should survive the asking, and they were being chatty enough with each other to suffice. "Hate the art," grumbled the earth pony through the spear clenched in his teeth. "Well then, if you would just learn to swim, we could take the long way, couldn't we? Suggested the unicorn with poison sweetness. "Hey, fuffin' sweepy." By his smell, decidedly more pungent than the others, I guess he just hated water in general. "Alright, now how about you start complaining and I'll let you sample one of the slaves before we get to the forest." Their leader, the earth pony named Cracker, with the spiked shoes and a cutie mark that looked suspiciously like a whip. Or maybe a snake? Turned back towards Monterey, and I with a filthy smile. I looked away. They just laughed. Through their disgusting dialogue, I could hear a liquid sound ahead. Not like a burbling water fountain, but closer to a slogging muck. And something else. A distant sound. Getting closer. Music? Yeah, music. Slightly teeny yet triumphant? Regal? I couldn't put my hoof on it exactly what feeling the music was trying to inspire, but it was brightly out of place. Cracker took note of my expression and smirked. "Oh, you look like you've never heard that before. What, did you live your life in a stable? If you're hoping for the cavalry, that ain't it, Philly. That's just one of those sprite bots." The music cut out with a sharp twang. The unicorn slaver saw it off, trod ahead a bit, peering down this path ahead. Oh, that's such a Good OC name for a pony, sawed off. Considering. He turned back to the rest of us, he smirked. Think one of the radigators got it? Cracker suggested it flew into some pony's booby-trapped. The other Earth pony suggested a mouthful of spear, mangled mumbling. The unicorn turned forward again, and the glow from his horn illuminated the machine. A metal ball about the size of a foal's head, floating on 4 silently flapping wings, hovering silently in front of his face. No arcane science this, I could tell. It was pure pony engineering. Fuck! Sawed-off leapt back with a full pony's length in surprise, then swung his shotgun to bear and fired it at the sprite bot. The sound was like a metal plate falling from the ceiling, and it echoed throughout the night-darkened hills. Sparks specked the metal ball as it peppered with scattershot. It let out an electric whine and darted into the darkness. The unicorn almost took off after it, but Cracker's voice cut the distance between them. Alright, that's enough, saw it off. Save your ammo. Yeah, damn it. I hate when they pull that stealthy shit. It's a flying fucking radio. It's not supposed to sneak up on ponies. My ears were burning from the free flow of crude profanity, but I didn't mind. I was mulling over what I had just seen. Ugh, idiot. Monterey Jack under his breath. They heard that all the way in Ponyville. Unlike my fellow slave, I was pleased to have witnessed the unicorn firing off his weapon, because now I knew how it worked. What kind of damned fool? Monterey grumbled. Announces his presence this close to Raider territory. A river slithered across our path. Actually, hold on. Let's take a break here for a second. So I'm having a great time. My throat is already dying, but I'm having a nice chill time. I hope that anyone that's here chilling with me is also having an okay time. The chances for me to continue doing this is like 50-50. I wanted to keep like doing this because I never read the fanfic all the way. Like I only got like a third of the way through. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I can like. I'm not sure if I have the commitment to vocally read the entire fanfiction, the entire main story. We still got a bit to go. I'm just kind of like chilling here for a second. Reading is honest work. But yeah, I really hope I can like get better with my reading, because I know my reading is like a little bit off. My stamina for speaking is also like very low. I just realized like I don't speak ever. It was actually until I started streaming, like streaming properly, like what, like 2 years ago, more or less, and realizing that it is actually very difficult to stay engaged. And I would and I would never like really talk to many people. I would just like I'm mostly like alone, and I would just like hang out alone. So I don't have much. I don't have like many people to talk to. So my wording is like really messed up, but also I can't like talk for long. It's both a skill and like a stamina to work on. Okay. Let's keep going. A river slithered across our path, its waters slipping and oozing along its banks, half stagnant. The water lapped and sucked at the supports of a bridge, making the wet sounds I had been hearing. Beyond the bridge lurked the shattered remains of a pre-war town. I'm just gonna pause right here for a second. I'm gonna switch to a different track here. Alright. The bridge was a maze of barricades. Dark shadows of ponies moved about it. Briefly, I may have made the mistake of hoping for rescue, but my eyes were drawn to the spiked poles that lined the bridge, and the still rotting heads of decapitated ponies that adorned two of them. I tasted bile. The sight was horrific. "Cager, stay here," Cracker said, finally putting a name to the spear-wielding slaver pony. "Sawed off? Let's go hear what the toll is this time." Monterey Jack lowered his head and looked balefully towards the bridge. I moved closer to him, following his example, and hoping that I had positioned myself so Cager couldn't see the faint glow from my horn as I slipped my screwdriver and bobby pin from my stable utility barding. Like all of the slaver's equipment, the manacles on my legs were crude and of low quality. As Cracker and Sawed-Off argued with the bridge ponies, I focused on picking the first lock. I was rewarded with a soft click as it sprung open, releasing my pip-buck foreleg. The manacle fell to the ground with a little thump. Huh? Cage's ears had shot up, and now he moved around to see me. Swiftly, I cut the magic, dropping the screwdriver and bobby pin into the dirt, and hoped that in the darkness the slaver couldn't see the change in my chains. "What do you do?" Keiji growled dangerously. The nasty, sharp edge of the shovel hovered inches from my eyes. Blam! Keiji turned abruptly, the spear shovel slashing close enough to my face that I shrieked, and the gunshot was from the bridge. It didn't sound like Sawed-Off's shotgun, but the second shot did. It took Keiji a breath to realize that the crossing of the bridge had become a bloody affair. Glowering back at us, his posture threatening, he started to say something? I suspect he was warning us to stay put, but I'll never know. His head exploded, showering me with gore. I stood there, eyes wide, shaking with shock. Blood, warm and sticky, running down my forehead and into my left eye, oozed into my coat and mane. In the growing list of things I had not seen before this night, the death of another pony ranked at the top. I blinked, feeling the blood on my eyelid. Keiji was dead, and I had Keiji all over me. The urge to throw myself into the river was overwhelming, but I wouldn't get to it like this. Pushed by something more than determination now, my horn once again lowered, and I began to unlock the rest of my manacles. I spared a glance toward the bridge, seeing Sawed-Off hunkering down beside one of the barricades as he magically pulled the shotgun open, stuffing in more ammo. 2 shots, I realized. One at the sprite bot, one just now. 2 shots, and then reload. Closing the weapon, he levitated up above the barricade and shot it blindly into the violent milieu, spraying an already wounded raider pony with scattershot. The pony staggered and fell. Unfortunately for Sawed-Off, the raider behind him had a different kind of shotgun. One that was faster and not limited to 2 shots, that fired slugs which tore great holes in the unicorn slaver's body the moment he looked up to see the results of his effort. I turned away, cringing from the nightmare playing out before me. I focused on the locks. So, hey, stuff is starting to pop off. Alright, here we go. Actually, hold on. Alright, now we go. I had freed myself and I was beginning to free Monterey when 2 raider ponies trotted off the bridge towards us, stepping over the battle-mutilated corpses of Cracker, Sawed-Off, and the raiders that they had taken down with them. One of those approaching was the unicorn raider wielding the devastating combat shotgun. The other, an earth pony with a sledgehammer in its teeth. The unicorn was laughing. Not the mean laugh of Cracker, but the crazed laugh that sent chills down the back of my neck. Looks like we got ourselves some prizes. The earth pony chortled up behind the sledgehammer as the unicorn looked at us over-appraisingly. The 2 were somehow even filthier than the slavers. The unicorn bore jagged scars across her face and flanks, one of them tearing through her cutie mark, several freshly bleeding. The earth pony was hairless and painfully burned over much of her left side. Both wore barding that looked ragged and cobbled together. Help us? I suggested weakly. Oh, I'll help you, all right. The unicorn reared up and gave me a kick, her hoofs striking hard into my side. Pain exploded, and I dropped, gasping. Rearing up again, she brought her full weight down on me, and I howled. Near me, Monterey let out a wet grunt of grain as the earth pony gave him a taste of her sledgehammer. Leaving me in a crying huddle, the unicorn also turned her attention to the still chained Monterey. In moments, it became clear that they intended to beat and bludgeon him until he was another lifeless corpse. And probably not stop then. Hold his leg out. I'm gonna shoot his hooves off. The unicorn raider floated the combat shotgun a foot from Monterey's splayed left hind leg, the only one I had freed from its manacle. Ignoring the pain, I leapt up, closing the distance, and spinning as I gave a fierce back kick. My hooves connected with the shotgun, sending it flying. It clattered onto the bridge beyond. A moment later, I was levitating the shovel spear at the 2 raider ponies who started facing me with gleeful expressions. 2 against 1, and both of them were experienced fighters. The one with the sledgehammer stepped closer, as if eager to see if hammer beat knife. Monterey was on her in an instant, throwing his 4 legs over her head, pulling the chain between them across her neck. The sledgehammer fell from her mouth as the raider pony choked. The unicorn turned, surprised by the sudden change in odds. I could have attacked her then, but threatening a pony is much different than actually attacking one. I wasn't sure if I had an enemy to slash at another pony to draw her blood, to maim, or possibly kill. The unicorn kicked up the fallen sledgehammer and turned to face me with it, murder in her eyes. And suddenly, I found it easy to thrust the shovel spear forward. I was no longer struggling with following through on a threat. This was survival. Self-preservation is instinctual. It clears away the moral hesitations. And while I did not have the fighting skills of my opponent, I did have an advantage of my own. Sats. Aided by the targeting spell of my pip-buck, I sent a spear... Aided by the targeting spell of my pip-buck, I sent a spear slashing across her knees, hobbling her. A second slash, this time across her face, relieved of her weapon. The third would be a killing blow. Except I wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. Instead, I swung the spear around, cracking her across the head with its handle, hard enough to splinter the wound. The unicorn raider fell at my feet, unconscious. I looked up, and Monterey was standing, chest heaving, over the body of the Earth Pony Raider, the life choked out of her. He was staring at me quietly, then finally raised a forehoof, only for the chain to clang tight before he had more than a few inches off the ground. Oh! Dropping the shovel spear. I turned on the light of my pip-buck and searched about for my screwdriver. I had lost the bobby pin, and there was no chance of finding it in the dirt at night. But I had more. Once we were both free, Monterey limped slowly over to the bridge. A moment later, he returned, his horn glowing a gentle beige. Sawed-off's shotgun followed him. Before I could react, he aimed at me. He aimed it at the head of the unconscious unicorn raider and fired. Oh wow. Her blood began to seep across the grounds towards my hooves. I watched in stunned silence as he turned and began prodding at the bodies, tugging items from them. Finally, I found my voice. "What are you doing?" He looked at me as if I was stupid. "Checking to see if they have anything valuable on them. With luck, food." I nodded, watching him move to the bodies at the end of this bridge. Looting the bodies of the dead felt wrong, but a cold, rational part of me murmured that it was a qualm I would have to get over in order to survive. And imagine how embarrassed I'd be if I starved to death out here because I've been too shy to check a dead pony's bag for a pouch of oats or a can of old applesauce. I moved a bit further down the bridge. I looked over the body of a dead raider pony, his face bloody and torn from Cracker's pony shoes. I started to go through the pockets of his barding, but my stomach rebelled, and I flung myself to the railing, heaving my lunch into the foul river below. A large break in the clouds brought a soft and silvery light to everything, and I could see my reflection in the water, still covered with KG's drying blood. And then sawed-off shotgun hovering in the air toward my head. "I'll be taking what you have, too," Monterey Jack informed me with a bored drawl. "What?" I turned slowly to see him standing on the bridge, bathed in moonlight, his horn glowing a soft beige light. The shotgun floated between is pointed at me. But I just saved you." "Yeah, and for that I'm not gonna kill you." His eyes narrowed. "Unless, of course, you do something stupid right now." "But I just saved you." "Aren't you top of your class?" he said snidely. "I mean, we can work together, travel together," Monterey snorted, "and split our limited provisions. Go to sleep with one eye open each night, hoping to catch you when you try to stab me in the back. No thanks." My righteous disbelief stopped short of denial. Suddenly, I was so very weary. Nodding, I lowered my head and let my 2 canteens slip free. I then backed up so he could approach them, and I turned my head to start unclasping my saddlebags. I saw it on the bridge just beyond my tail. Turning back to Monterey, my own horn was glowing, and the combat shotgun whipped into the air. For a long moment, we stood there, 2 unicorn ponies on a bridge, surrounded by bodies, shotguns floating between us, aimed at each other. Moonlight shone down on us from the break in the clouds. Monterey Jack broke the silence. "You're not gonna use that. I saw you spare that raider. If you couldn't kill a pony like that, you don't have it in to kill me." I narrowed my eyes. I'm a quick study." He huffed but didn't move. "Do you even know how to use that thing?" I forced a smile across my face. "Do you know that you only have 1 shot left? And judging by that sprite bot, that gun is in such poor repair, I'll survive being shot with it. Will you survive being shot with this as many times as I can move the trigger while you're trying to reload?" Monterey Jack stood back a bit, took a step back. And with that falter, my smile was no longer forced. "And I'll be taking my canteens back." Alright. Nice. Whew. That's like a very, like, fairly short scene, but still, like, it felt really long to read. Alright, let's keep going. Sorry for the flashing on the screen. Again, I'm switching between, I'm trying to switch between songs. Hopefully the audio is like good enough that you can hear it. That's like ambient enough. It's like background enough, but you could still hear it. Okay. Ponyville. I wonder just how my Pip-Buck knew the names of places before I did. It even named the wreckage of a building that I had just slipped into. Ponyville was raider territory. I just hoped this carousel boutique was not crawling with them. Monterey Jack and I had barely parted ways when the railing of the bridge exploded next to me. A sniper. The same pony I presumed who had turned Keiji's head into applesauce. I fled into the town, keeping to what cover there was. Few of the buildings were intact enough to hide in. This was the closest. Fortunately, I was alone. I waited for nearly an hour, curled up in the shadow near the door. But the sniper pony seemed uninspired to follow me. No, she or he could just wait until I came out. Fatigue washed over me. I had stayed up all night before, and this night's events were a strain on both body and spirit. My muscles were weak and achy. My body hurt from the kicks I had taken. I felt emotionally played out. I need to sleep. Sleeping here was probably a horrible idea. If I woke up at all, it could be in the hooves of slavers, raiders, or possibly worse. But going back outside, finding someplace better, it just wasn't on the table. I was in no shape to test my wits against the sniper pony again. Carousel Boutique was quite similar in condition to the building up at Sweet Apple Acres, only the looting was more destructive. The walls had been painted with crude images of violence and cruder swear words. A pile of torn up cloth rotted in a corner, smelling foul, like ponies had urinated on it repeatedly. There were 2 beds, one of which was stained deeply with blood and possibly more vile things. The other was a foal's bed, nothing but a mattress on a crushed frame. In my state, I felt it would do wonderfully. The Carousel Boutique offered 2 more treasures, a locked chest and another terminal, identical to the one at Sweet Apple Acres. This one too was still functional, again to my surprise. It was locked. Slipping out my access tool, I went to work. These terminals were crafted by some of the same ponies who later made the Pip-Bucks, and the encryptions and locks were similar enough that my tools allowed me to get partway through the security. What remained was a puzzle, finding a password within strands of code that my access tool laid bare. In my fried mental state, it was probably a small miracle that I was able to parse the code and find the password. Or probably not. The password was Apple. I laughed out loud, catching myself when I heard the volume of my own voice in the stillness of the decrepit boutique, as I realized that, beyond all realistic chance, this was the computer that the message had been sent out to. With an unwarranted feeling of accomplishment, I downloaded it and let my Pip-Buck do the rest. Age has damaged the recording, but there was enough audible for me to recognize that the same female voice, kind of sweet with an odd accent, that had many hours before revealed to me the code had let me out of my old life and into this new and horrible one. Special instructions for Sable 2. That's my family down there. Until the poison is gone up from there, that door doesn't open for any pony. Oh wait, no, this would be Rarity, right? Special instructions for Stable 2. That's my family down there. Yeah, that's... Until the poison is gone from here, that door doesn't open for any pony. The voice faded in and out of static. I know you hate this, Sweetie Belle, but you're an overmare now. The overmare of the most important stable in all of Equestria. I need you to do this for me. To keep them safe. Best friends forever, remember? Oh wait, no, that's not Rarity. This it's Apple Bloom. Yeah, that makes more sense. It's Apple Bloom. It's Apple Bloom talking to Sweetie Belle. The sound file died with a whimper. I had been right. There was really no value in a 2-century-old message. I left the chest for the morning, curled up, and went to sleep. And we got a level up. Horse Sense. Gain additional 10% XP wherever XP is learned, or is earned. Swift Learner. So yeah, I already mentioned this, but this was how I felt playing Fallout 3 for the first time back in the day. Very interesting story is for the longest time I did not keep track of video games, like video game news, because I was like behind. I had a PS2 and I had like a bunch of games for it, not like all the games, not a lot, but I had a few. And I actually had a few PS2s and they all broke down. And my last one broke down and I spent I want to say all up to like 2010 or so. Actually, a little bit earlier than that. I spent like most of like the late 2000s playing with my Nintendo 64 because my PS2 broke down and I did not have any money for anything else. So I did not know anything about a PS3. I did not know about that generation of games, about the PS3, Xbox 360 generation. The only thing that I knew was old clips that I would see on XPlay or G4. G4, that's what it was. On-demand videos of G4. And one of those videos was a G4 walkthrough of how to get the I forgot what it's called. I know it's called the Fat Boy, the mini nuke launcher in Fallout 3, but the multiple ones. There was like a guide from G4, like a video guide, telling you where to get the parts for it. Anyway, yeah, I did not know anything about the old that current generation, the PS3 generation. Up until my dad gave us like a bunch of PC games of that generation. He gave us Dead Space, Assassin's Creed 1, The Witcher 1, Fear 1, right? And then there was also Fallout 3. And also Call of Duty 4. My brother and I tried Call of Duty 4, and it was great. And we decided to play other games. I think my brother started with Assassin's Creed, and I started with Fallout 3. And Fallout 3 had a very, very long manual. I did not play the game yet, but I was looking through the manual and I'm like, holy shit, what is this game? I can talk to people, I have dialogue choices, I can explore an open world, there's a crime and punishment system, I can loot weapons and repair them. What? Oh, this is crazy. That's wild. Oh shit. And it really surprised me. And then when I actually started the game, I was scared out of my mind because I was jumping from Nintendo 64 to a PS3, Xbox 360 generation game of an open world type. It was such a huge jump for me that it kind of blew my mind. I just thought it would be like, I thought that was like a really interesting experience. And the point I wanted to make was that reading this fanfic kind of gave me that same feeling again. It gave me that same feeling of being immersed and being like just so interested in like a world. Okay, let's move on to the next and probably last chapter. Last chapter for tonight. This one's about as long as the previous one. So let's go through it. I'm gonna switch. Let's switch tracks for a second. Okay. Got chapter 3, guidance. Books. I've read several on the subject. Daylight. I had never seen the sun before, and it was fair to say I still hadn't. But the power of its light filtered down through the thick, angry cloud cover, turning a sickly color, yet still brighter and warmer than the humming lights of Stable 2. The air itself looked somehow wrong in the lights, off color, but everything was illuminated. I could see motes of dust and ash floating about the room. I wonder how healthy it was to be breathing in it, and for the first time I really grasped the expanse of the outside. It made me want to hide under the window. While working up the nerve to step into the very, very big outdoors, I preoccupied myself with opening the locked chest I had discovered the night before. It took 2 of my bobby pins, but it was worth it. Inside was the most beautiful dress I have ever seen. Such lines, such folds of fabric, and the colors, elegant and regal. Yet the fabric was light, breezy, and did not sag. It was a dream. Sadly, a dream for another taller pony. Joy and disappointment mixed in equal measure, but even if I could not wear it, at least not without some major tailoring, it was the prettiest and most cheerful thing I had seen since leaving the stable. Carefully folding it up, I slipped it into my saddlebags. Mindful of the sniper pony from the night before, I stood back, behind the cover of an unturned table, and used my magic to open the door. A tarnished bell hanging above twinkled cheerfully. Muted sunlight poured in. The sounds of outside flowed into the room. The twitter of birds, the faraway sloshing of the river, fresher air pushed back the stale. Cautiously, I moved into the doorway and looked about. Post-apocalyptic Ponyville was a rotting skeleton of a once homey little town. Between collapsed buildings and burned homes, the streets were littered with rubble and refuse. And everywhere, garnished paints of depravity and grotesquerie. The graffiti was not limited to outside. The raiders had to face the Carousel Boutique with an almost ecstatic fervor. I turned from the doorway, my gaze following the lines of profanity that curled up the walls towards the rafters, and shrank back, choking in revulsion of what the sunlight revealed above me. Dozens of dead and desiccated cats had been hung from the ceiling like decorations. I had slept directly underneath 3 of them. I took an involuntary step back, one hind hoof out the door. Beep. What was that? Beep. I turned and spied on the half-buried orange disc in the ground, just outside the door. A little red light was pulsing on it. Beep, 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 beep. Close the door! The voice came out of nowhere, tinny and mechanical, but somehow full of urgency. My heart lurched and I jumped back inside, slamming the door hard. The explosion just outside tore the door off its frame, hurling it and me back into the room. I crashed through a tattered vanity divider, the smoking door landing over me. Ugh! I was no more shocked than her as I slowly dragged myself out from under the door. My ears are ringing. A trap. No wonder the raider ponies hadn't invaded while I slept. They had left a present instead. Hurry! There are more on the way! I could barely make out the voice. My ears felt like they were stuffed with cotton candy. Who are you? I queried, but moved to throw any canteens over my neck while magically drawing out the combat shotgun. I had been dismayed to learn that it had only had 1 shot left. but if a raider pony stepped through the door, I intended to make it count. An entirely different voice replied, come out wherever you are." The head of the raider pony slid into the doorway, grinning maniacally with something in her teeth. It looked like a metal apple. She tossed her head. It threw into the room at me, but the stem stayed behind in her teeth. A memory flashed through my mind. I, as a younger pony, trotting to the stable schoolroom when an older pony stepped out of the doorway and heaved a water balloon at me. It had burst against my horn, soaking me and my homework. "Hey, don't look so sad, blank flanks. I was just trying to help you. You know, in case your cutie mark is supposed to be a target." The older pony had laughed and hurried to class, leaving me dripping and miserable in the hall. Lesson learned. When some pony throws something at you, don't let it hit you. Don't even let it hit near you, because it might splash. The combat shotgun clattered to the floor as I focused my magic on the metal apple, catching it and hurling it back at the door. The grenade barely cleared the door frame when it exploded. Dust and splinters of wood flew at me, getting in my eyes. A tinkling erupted at my feet. Looking down, blinking at the debris from my eyes, I saw the little bell from over the door had landed, mangled, at my hooves. My eyes hurt, and I kept blinking to clear them. Cautiously lifting the combat shotgun again, I edged towards the door. I could barely see the foreleg of the raider pony around the edge of the door frame, completely still. But with a second thought, I levitated the table so that it formed a barricade over the lower half of the doorway and crawled up behind it. Quickly popping my head up, I looked to see if the raider pony was still conscious. The leg wasn't attached to the rest of the pony. It took me a moment to spot the rest of her torn body, mercifully dead. I dropped back under cover, feeling a strangeness pass over me. I just killed some pony. Hey, there we go. Little Pip is finally one on the board. Alright. Sneaking out of Ponyville had been harrowing. I realized early that I had been neglecting my eyes forward sparkle. Once I had brought up my EFS, it was far easier to determine where the raider ponies are and to avoid them. Despite actively looking for me, the raider ponies proved less than adept hunters. Using my magic to bang a mailbox lid down the street or break an empty bottle against a freestanding chimney several yards away provided sufficient distraction to get past them. I had almost made past the last house when the sniper pony started taking shots at me again. The closest shot grazed my flank, a slash of burning pain and flowing blood. Fortunately, the wound looked far worse than it was, and even my meager medical skills were enough to stop the bleeding and bandage it. I crouched in a little gully, sheltered by trees, and fought to catch my breath. Somewhere in the distance, I heard music playing again. The rumble from my stomach was much louder, reminding me that I hadn't eaten in almost a day. I floated out one of my apples from my saddlebags while I uncorked one of my canteens. Of course, I had no more than taken a sip when my pip-buck drew a dancing red light into my EFS compass. Not coming from the raider town, but from up ahead, deeper into the hilly wood. Of course, something was coming out to get me, because the wasteland clearly hated me. I recorked the canteen and stood up, wincing at the flare of heat in my wounded flank. I lifted the combat shotgun still with its single shots and it perked my ears to listen. My surroundings were quiet. Even the music was gone. And then I started to make out a faint buzzing. I lifted the gun to eye level and focused down the top of the barrel, lining it up with the warning mark on the red on my EFS. At first I saw nothing. Then I spotted it. An ugly little flying creature, bloated and grotesque, hovering between the trees. It spotted me too, and shot a spiny dart through the air at me. It missed me, mostly getting tangled in my mane. I aimed, but hesitated. The damn thing was so small and it could jerk about so erratically that I had almost no chance of hitting it. I didn't dare waste my only shot, so I did the next best thing. I dodged behind a tree and prepared to gallop. Another mark appeared on my EFS, followed by a scorching, crackling sound, quite unlike anything I heard before. The red light winked out, leaving only the new one, which my pip buck had divined as friendly. I'm really sorry what happened back in Ponyville, but that raider didn't give you any choice. She would have killed you. It was that same maniacal, tinny voice that had shouted out the warning that surely saved my life earlier. With a mixture of relief and bewilderment, I watched the sprite bot fly up to my hiding place. Who are you? What are you? Was the question I wanted to escape my muzzle, but I suspected it would be rude. Oh, a friend. I raised an eyebrow. Okay, a passing acquaintance, but one that doesn't mean you any harm. After a pregnant pause, call me, Watcher. I regarded the sprite bot critically. Watcher. Okay. I slipped out from behind the tree and started looking for where my apple had rolled onto when I dropped it. Not far away, near where the flying creature had been, I spotted a glowing pile of pink ash. You do that? Bloat sprites. Oh, that's what you get when you mix Paris sprites with taints. Can't stand it myself. Glad to help. Finding my apple, I levitated it up. Thank you, and thank you for warning about that thing in the ground? Mine. I blinked. You want my apple? The sprite bot laughed, which was very weird to hear since the artificial voice didn't have any inflection. No, that's what it was called. The explosive in the ground. It's called a mine. It triggers when you step close. Oh, okay. I took a bite of the apple. It's a stupid name for a weapon. The sprite bot laughed again. It was a little unnerving. Then, strangely, I found myself chuckling as well. I really thought you meant my apple was yours. I'd share it if you wanted, although I don't know what you would do with it since you can't eat. Huh? For having no emotion in its voice, the sprite bot did a good job at conveying confusion. You don't eat food because you're a robot. You don't have a mouth? A third time with the laughter, although this was more of a slight chuckle. Oh, you mean the sprite bot? Well, at least I was the only one this conversation had managed to confuse, although I was more confused now than ever. The sprite bot isn't actually me. I'm somewhere else. I just learned how to hack into these things to communicate and look around. I was beginning to get the picture. Then the music. Oh gosh, no. I turned that crap off the moment I hack into one of these things. You have no idea how old that music gets. As an afterthought, the hacker in the Spritebot added, "Yet." I finished my apple. My stomach felt much better now, as did my spirits, thanks to having a civilized, if utterly bizarre, conversation. Oh, time is almost up. Look, if there are a few things you're going to need if you want to survive out here. A weapon, or at least a lot more ammo for the one you have. Armored barding, a bit of guidance, and most importantly, you need to make friends. Armor at least shouldn't be too hard. Although I shuddered hard at the thought of putting a dead pony's barding. Still, that grazing shot. I'd been outside less than a day and already had become terrifyingly close to death. I could probably slip back around to the bridge and strip off the corpses there. A weapon? If the idea of stripping armor from a dead made me cringe, then the idea of possibly killing again stopped my heart. And friends? I'd had no luck with that as a foal in the stable. What chance did I have that in a world where saving a pony from raiders and slavery didn't get you a friendship welcome mat? If this is what I need to do to survive, I wasn't sure if I was up to the task. What do you mean by guidance? The bobbing Spritebot was silent a moment. I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and guess you like books. Am I right? Well, yeah, there's a great book for people traveling through the equestrian wasteland. I'm pretty sure there is a copy in the Ponyville library. Just give me a second. Okay, I've sent the tag for it to your Pip-Buck. My eyes widened in alarm. The Ponyville library? You mean that place I just barely escaped from? The town full of sick and psycho ponies. Are you trying to get me killed? Look, you've got to trust somebody. The memory of Monterey Jack surfaced in my mind. And why should I trust you? I've never even met you. You're hiding behind a robot radio. Oh, I don't know. How about the me saving your life part? If I was trying to kill you, why would have I done that? The voice watcher had a point. Before I could say anything to the effect, however, the Spritebot burped static and began playing music again. The music featured multiple harmonicas and trombones. It flew lazily away, as if it didn't care I was there. Whew, okay. So we're like a third of the way through this chapter. It's a long chapter. One of the things that I've still have to work on is my accents. One is my accents. Two is keeping track of which character has what kind of voice or accent. That's also very hard to do. Especially when I'm trying to, keep at a good pace with the reading. My brain is like working overtime here. It's kind of silly because right before the stream, for like the past couple of hours, I was actually playing I was playing Red Faction, and I've been like so glued to it that I've been like it made me really tired. It made me really exhausted, both mentally and like in my eyes. So I'm already like really tired to begin with. It was the first time I was playing Red Faction. I decided to put it on hard, didn't realize that the ending is like stupidly hard. I just rage quitted. I can't deal with that. Maybe I'll play Red Faction 2. I remember playing that a long time ago, and I had a good time. Gonna hydrate. The Ponyville Library was in a tree. Not a tree house, but it was literally inside a tree. A massive, gnarled tree, bigger than most buildings had ever been grown in the middle of town. Clearly the project of magic and hollowed out to be the public library. The south side of the tree was scorched black and dead, but there were still a few leaves clinging to life on the opposite branches. The tree was surrounded by a wide open space with absolutely no cover. Any hope my luck at the Carousel Boutique would hold out here was dashed when I looked up to the highest balcony and finally spotted the Sniper Pony, an Earth Pony armed with a powerful looking rifle. The rifle was attached to the balcony railing with a gliding swivel mount, allowing the raider to aim it wherever she could see. The only safe approach was from directly behind her, where the door to the balcony and the narrow top of the tree beyond blocked her line of sight. There were surely more raider ponies inside. Sneaking up carefully from the only direction that wouldn't mean instant death, I was trembling with nerves by the time I reached the door. As swiftly and silently as I could, I slipped out of Ponyville and straight into Pony Hell. Pony corpses everywhere. Actually, let's switch to a different track for this one. Here we go. Pony corpses everywhere. Not like the bridge where ponies had fallen in battle, these ponies had been mutilated, desecrated, and put on display. Some poor pony's body hung from the ceiling, head and hooves severed and flesh sliced open and pulled back to reveal the meat and bones underneath. Heads and limbs hung from the chains like sick party decorations. The rotting body of a pink pony with a violent mane was mounted, spread-eagled over a bookcase with railroad spikes. Two had been driven into her eyes. On another wall, a torso had been skinned and sliced open, the body's entrails pulled out to decorate the shelves like streamers. Blood and gore were everywhere, dripping from the ceiling and painting the walls in equal parts, with the graffiti that had been somehow gotten even more mocking and cruel. Between the bookcases, pre-war posters were mounted in shattered frames. Some raider pony had painted over them. Reading is magic, with a crude but effective depiction of a mega-spell detonation. Another, the most beautiful ponies have beautiful minds, was covered over by a painting that was simply pornographic. The books have been burned in piles. The floor was layered in ash and filth. The stench was unbearable. The room was dominated by 3 cages, 2 large square ones and a smaller one hanging from the ceiling, which was clearly big enough for a pony. Captives, filthy, beaten and misused, were curled up inside, their hooves tied together with stained ropes. The 2 in the nearest cage looked at me pitifully, and my heart wrenched painfully. My eyes kept going wider until I had to clench them shut and bite my own hoof to keep from screaming. I back against the door, heaving, unable to breathe properly, not wanting to breathe this air at all. The horror of the room flooded over me, drowning me. I pulled my hoof away barely fast enough to avoid vomiting my apple all over myself. The stench of it mixed with the reek of the room, assaulting me further. "Please," a whisper from one of the ponies, terrified to raise her voice. "Help us." This was beyond horror. I pressed my eyes tighter and tighter, then opened them as a wave of brutal determination cut through the sickness. "Please, help." That was no voice, disembodied and trapped in an internal loop, coming from some radio signal floating through the ether. These were living ponies. They were right here in front of me, and they needed help. And I was as damned as those rotten raiders if I was going to make them beg again. The screwdriver and bobby pin slipped out and immediately began working on the nearest lock. With a click, the metal cage door swung open. Inside, 2 ponies, bound and laying in their own filth. I realized uncomfortably that I had nothing to cut the ropes with. I had tried to untie them with my magic. The first pony's ropes were so wet with blood that I could pull them apart, but the second ponies were bound too tightly. Are you for real?" The first pony stood shakily. "I'm free?" I nodded, then glanced to the other ponies. I had no idea how I'd reached the one in the hanging cage. If you can help me with..." The pony blanched and shook her mane. "Oh no, I can't stay here any longer, but here, take these supplies. I managed to squirrel them away." The pony dug into the floor muck with her hoof, revealing the utterly pathetic pile of scraps laying on a dirty rag that amounted to her entire worldly possessions: a can of diced carrots, a box of pre-war single-serve cake, and a handful of bottle caps. It broke my heart. No, you can keep it. You'll need it more." I paused, my eye catching a single shotgun shell in the pile. Oh, actually, I'll take the shell, thanks." I magically opened the shotgun and slid it into place. Now, I had 2. The pony had already folded up the rag, picked it up in her teeth, and slinked it rapidly out the door before I could say anything else. I sent up a prayer to Celestia for her and focused on saving the others. I looked over the second pony, who hadn't said a word, and recoiled as I saw the blood caking the inside of her flanks. What had these raiders done? Looking around in the shape of the room, trying to blot out the horrors everywhere I turned. Above the front door was an aged fresco of a beautiful white-winged unicorn. Celestia? Unusually large and graceful, a book floating in front of her, her wings outstretched over a rainbow of foals as they smiled up and listened to story time. Not only had the ponies been painted over with images of blood and knives and violence, the fresco had been used for target practice, everything from bullets to flung excrement, and was now shattered and stained unspeakingly. The room was oddly shaped, with balconies and rooms branching literally off in all directions. I can hear voices of raider ponies in the other rooms, and judging from the decor, knives wouldn't be too far behind. "I'll be right back," I promised with a whisper, then levitating the combat shotgun. I moved towards the nearest interior door. I jumped back as the door swung open at me. A raider pony stepped through and stopped, staring at me blankly. His coat was dark black under his makeshift armor, his mane wild. Holsters were strapped to the flanks, one with a small gun, the other holding a blade whose edge was jagged like a saw, ensuring the most grievous of wounds. In stark, horrified disbelief, I saw that his cutie mark was actually a splayed torso. Nice. Alright. Stuff is gonna pop off here. I'm gonna switch to something else. Let's go. The raider pony recovered quickly, swinging his head around and drawing out the small gun in his teeth. What was he going to pull the trigger with his tongue? Just before Sats helped me pump my 2 shotgun rounds into his face, I felt no remorse as his head turned into spaghetti sauce that splattered over his instantly lifeless body. I hadn't just killed the pony. These raiders had given any right to the title. But these were not ponies. They were sick monsters that needed to be put down. And Celestia helped me if I wasn't gonna do just that. I didn't realize that until that moment I was mad. The pure evil of this place had shaken me to the core, and my core was furious. Collecting knife and gun, I dropped the empty combat shotgun to the side. The smaller weapon was not going to be as powerful, but it was fully loaded, 6 shots in a revolving barrel. And that was good, because there was no way the noise wasn't going to bring every raider pony running. The first 3 raider ponies galloped into the main library almost immediately, one of them crying out thrilled insults. Sats helped me fire 3 shots at her head. The first 2 missed, but the third found a home in one of her ugly red eyes, and down she went. The second started firing another small firearm at me. Huh, what do you know, they do shoot with their tongues. Bullets impacting the doorframe. One shot punctured one of my saddlebags, but it didn't pierce flesh. I crouched and poked my head around, levitating the revolver in the open doorway. I fired 2 shots at the second pony, but my Pip-Buck's targeting spell was refreshing, and without it, I might as well have been aiming at the ceiling. Still, the gunslinger raider skittered away, using one of the captive ponies for cover. The dishonorableness poured gasoline on the fire of my anger. I stepped fully into the doorway, looking for the third, spotting him on the far end of the main room. The third raider pony lowered his head. A pool cue clenched in his teeth and charged at me. I blinked. Really? I took a single step back. The pony rushed at me full tilt and was nearly on me when the ends of the pool cubes struck the doorway, snapping him to a stop. I fired the revolver's last shot point blank into his neck. Even I didn't need sats at that range. Shouldn't you ponies be smarter than that? You live in a library. As the body slumped into the floor, bleeding from the gaping wound through its neck, I saw the gun-wielding raider standing in the open, aiming through the floor. I dived to the sides as the shots rang out, and screamed as I felt a bullet sink into my side. It hurt, more than I thought it would. I fell against the wall, leaving a bloody smear as I collapsed next to the doorway. Pain seared my side. Flaring with each breath, I could hear the clop of the raider's hooves as he approached cautiously. I tried to focus my magic to close the door, but the body of pool but the body of Polecube Pony was in the way. I cast about the room. It was a kitchen. On a table surrounded by knives was the body of a fearsome creature of scales and teeth. The raider pony with the splayed torso cutie mark had been carving it up to cook. A refrigerator, an oven. There were scattered books, but all ancient, destroyed, and unreadable. I was beginning to doubt the Watcher's assertion that there was a book here, like he described. Then my eyes fell on what I was hoping for. In one corner, mounted on the wall over several metal boxes of ammunition, was a faded yellow box with a pink butterfly symbol on it. A medical box. Double lock. The box looked to be locked. There were knife scrapes all over it where the raiders had attempted to get it open. It should still have a few medical poultices. Maybe even a healing potion. But I had to survive the raider pony first, and I was wounded and out of bullets. Crossing to the ammo boxes would mean moving across the open doorway. Scooting back, I looked around again and focused my magic through the pane. When the raider pony stepped in, he was met in by a swarm of knives flying at his face. Shah! He turned and fled back out. The knives all either missed or struck uselessly against his armor. I was even more pathetic with melee weapons than I was with guns, but it got him out of the way long enough to make for the ammo boxes. Luck was with me again. While one box had ammo in large clips for a type of gun I had yet to see, the other had bullets designed for the revolver. The raider poked his head around, again, calling out, "You're all out of knives, missy. Why don't you come on out? I promise I'll let you die." Eventually, his head turned in my direction. His eyes went wide. I don't know if it was the look in my eyes or the revolver. Sats was with me again, and this bastard wasn't going to get another chance to use raped and beaten captives as a shield. Ooh, I'm like really running out of steam. We're almost done though, by the way. Let's see if I can get through this. Yeah. But yeah, I'm like really tiring out. This is really exhausting. I hope to get better over time. Hey, Tennis, how are you? Bear hugs back. Thank you. That is like very much needed. That's like my guiding light. My like refresher. So one more dead raider, a picked medical box, and a healing potion later, I trotted quietly back into the main room, serrated knife floating by my side. I moved to the open cage and sawed away the ropes binding to the poor pony. Go, you're free. Get somewhere safe. With a blink, I remember the sniper pony and quickly told her which direction to sneak away in. She nodded mutely and began to slink out. I moved to the next cage. What I saw sickened me. A pony had been locked inside along with a decaying corpse. The pony was whimpering in her sleep and had her tail wrapped around a ghastly body like a Teddy Ursa. Unlike the other bodies, I couldn't tell how this one had died, for it wasn't carved apart. The body had lost all its coat. Its skin was a sickening blotchwork of red and gray, flaking away. Its eyes were open, dry, and staring in wrong directions. Its teeth were horribly yellowed, matching the few strands of hair left in its mane and tail. Odd, fleshy growths hung from its sides. At first I mistook them for mutations, but then I realized I was looking at the pony's wings. This was the body of a Pegasus pony. Stripped off feathers and hair, the wings looked strange, even repulsive. I screamed, a full-throated cry of terror, when the corpse shifted position and sat up, its eyes sliding around until they both focused on me. It was a zombie pony. The zombie pony blinked at me, then tried to get up, only to fall over onto one winged side as its hooves were bound in ropes like the others. She stared at me plaintively. My mind was reeling. Of the scattered half-thoughts that flitted through my brain, untie the nice zombie so she doesn't get mad at me managed to be the most coherent, if not the most sane. Swallowing, I moved the knife down to her ropes. Hold still. I looked in her eyes and quickly focused. Sorry. I looked at her eyes and was quickly forced to look away. One of them was sliding again. Her breath was fetid. Now, if I let you go, and you try to eat my brains, we're gonna have harsh words, okay? I had freed the second two captives, including the zombie pony, both of whom slipped away without an offer to help, although the zombie at least smiled at me, which was deeply unpleasant, and was trying to figure out how to get the hanging cage when two more raider ponies appeared on a balcony above. One of them was a unicorn pony with a very scary looking firearm. I dove into the shelter of a stairwell as the raider opened fired. The gun let out a terrifying cacophony of rapid fire cracks as it sprayed the main room with bullets. At least I know what type of gun the large clips were now. I waited until I heard him reloading, then dashed into the room and spun to face him, focusing all my magic, not my own weapon nor on him, but on the bookshelf behind him. The glow on my horn stood out brighter and brighter as he lifted the reloaded assault rifle and took aim for my head. Crash! Bookshelf came down on top of him, knocking him unconscious. The assault rifle fell to the floor in a rain of dead books. Something else showered down as well, thrown from the falling bookshelf, knocking away a book that had fallen over it. I saw that it was an ancient, dusty pair of pre-war binoculars. At first, it struck me as extremely odd that someone would need binoculars in a library. That would require some really bad eyesight, but the silly thought passed. I couldn't see where the other raider pony had gotten to. Swiftly, I added the assault rifle to my growing collection, and the binoculars for good measure. Then, I looked back to the balcony, considering it as a way to get to the cage the pony was hanging from the ceiling. If I can get up there, I thought, I could leap it from it to the cage. That would get me close enough that I could see what I was doing while I picked the lock. The second raider pony appeared back at the railing, a wicked grin on his face. With a hoof, he shoved forward an ammo box, tilted it over. The lid sprung open and half a dozen orange discs poured out into the library below. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, fuck. I dashed as fast as my little legs could take me, leaping over the body of Pool Cube Pony and under the kitchen table, using my magic to toss it over as a shield. Carved up refrigerator slid to the floor with a meaty thump. Behind my shield, the world became blinding light and fire. So this crazy motherfucker just threw an entire box of explosives into this one room. That's outrageous. That is like super overkill. Like an entire box of like grenades. That should like level the whole building. But no, this is a magical tree. When I emerged, the main room was a wreck. Fresh blood dripped down into my mane. Looking up, I saw the blast-torn remains of the pony in its twisted metal cage. Oh, Celestia, damn them to hell. More determined than ever, I stripped the raider bodies, what little was left of them now, of their armors. The armors were in shredded tatters. But with some effort, I was able to use the best parts of each to patch together something that would give me better protection than my stable-issued utility barding. The resulting outfit had almost no pockets, so I'd have to dig the utility suit out of my saddlebags to get the most of my tools, but it was a fair trade. Putting it on was gruesome. My hooves were darkened with blood just from working on it. Every inch was covered in the flash-fried gore of dead ponies. I almost lost my nerve and abandoned the awful thing. I slipped it on. My stomach rebelled, but I didn't have any more to throw up. A last look around while I figured I still had time. The raider above obviously assumed I was dead. I would have assumed I was dead too. Looting the bodies garnered me a little bit more ammo. The gun from the earlier raider had been in bad shape to begin with and was damaged beyond repair by the explosion. Several ponies apparently collected bottle caps, which struck me as an absurdly odd thing to hoard. I left those alone. The kitchen's refrigerator had a small stockpile of food. Cooked rag-gator meat, a few skewers of barbecued fruits, and what the pip-buck identified as bloat spray meat. A box of pre-war cake, because nothing says healthy eating like 200-year-old food, and some water that looked like it was bottled straight out of a sludge river. I took everything but the cake and water. Apparently the splayed torso cutie raider was a rather decent cook. With a second thought, I looked over the ingredients on the cake box. Filled with enough preservatives that your stomach will still be intact long after the rest of you rotted away to dust. And took it too. Like she's like still like examining and like she's able to like get things done while people are still in the room. Like they're still in the building. That's crazy. The raider pony was in the main room looking over his handiwork when I returned from the kitchen. One look at me and my growing pile of weaponry and he fled up the stairs. I galloped after him, revolver sipping through the air in a cloud of levitation magic that matched the light around my horn. He went through a door on the level above. It only took me a moment to reach it, but caution made me skid to a stop before barreling through. If that had been me on the other side, I'd be waiting just to the side of the door, ready to take the head off the raider who rushed through. With positions reversed, With the positions reversed, I was not going to make the same mistake. A filly's cry from inside, "Ah, help!" changed the scenario. Standing to the side, I threw open the door. When there was no attack, I darted in and stopped short. The room was lined with more destroyed books on either side, and ended in a large window that opened onto a balcony. This room was decorated as disgustingly as the last, but filled with stained sleeping mattresses. Near the open window, a filly too young to even have her cutie mark lay on a mattress stained with so much blood that it was nearly black. She had been brutalized and raped repeatedly, and her flank was covered in small burns where her cutie mark would have eventually appeared. Her ropes were on the floor nearby, looking chewed through. And between myself and her, the raider pony stood with a shocking hostage. The zombie pony. It took me a moment to realize that she must have flown in from the balcony, and if I was allowed to believe there was any decency left in the world, it would have been her who gnawed the filly's ropes free. Now, she was against the wall, with the blade of an axe to her throat. A small part of my brain insisted on distracting me by wondering how the zombie pony could have flown when her wings didn't have any feathers, as if that was a more significant mystery than how she could be alive, by some definition, in her decayed physical condition. My distraction was distracted by a nearby table. An ashtray with a smoking cigar told me just how the filly had gotten those burns. Rage welled up inside me until I felt it would burst through my eyeballs. Next to the ashtray, 2 familiar metal apples rested on top of an only lightly stained book with a stylized pony skull on the cover. A second book, this one showing a revolver almost identical to the one floating next to me, had slipped to the floor where it rested against one leg of the table, along with several pencils and a filly's lunchbox. A smiling, gentle white unicorn with a beautiful lavender and pink mane stared back beneath the StableTech logo. It felt wrong that something so innocent looking should be in this place. My eyes turned to the Earth Pony Raider with an axe in his teeth. For a moment, I just hated at him. The room quiet, except for the filly's occasional whimpers. When my voice returned, my words surprised me. By Celestia, you're stupid. Hard to tell a pony to back off or surrender when your mouth is full of axe, isn't it? Maybe if you spent some time reading these books, then rather than destroying them, you'd be smart enough to come up with a plan that actually allowed you to negotiate a way out of this? The grenades levitated off the table, and I dangled it between us. One that doesn't end with me shoving one of these up your tail hole? The raider pressed the axe blade tighter against the zombie pony's throat, enough to cut flesh, which split and pulled back as it had been strained taut. Ichor that might have been blood oozed from the wound. The zombie pony didn't flinch or whimper, but the filly did both. Right. Kill her. The revolver floated forward next to the grenades. That way, there won't be anything to block my shot. I could see the raider considering his options and not liking what he was finding. Dropping the axe from his mouth, he whinnied pathetically, "I don't want to die," and dashed for the open balcony, leaping over the cringing filly. Sat sent 4 shots right into his ass. It was a pathetic way to die. Looking to the filly and zombie pony, I smiled grimly. There's one left. I'll be right back. I turned and continued up the stairs towards the upper balcony and the sniper pony. Better equipped and a lot more confident, my heart is still flickering with righteous fire. I had made my way carefully out of Ponyville. Up ahead, I spotted a huge gazebo surrounding a marble statue of a rearing pony, girded with combat barding, a sword in his mouth. The gazebo was relatively free of graffiti, and peeking through the binoculars, I could see why. The field of weeds around it were teeming with radigators. My EFS was filling with red marks as I drew closer. Slipping out of my newly acquired assault rifle, I picked off a few. Their meat, I knew now, was safe when cooked. Or at least relative to other food source in the Equestrian wasteland. Slipping the sniper rifle back into its harness, another gift from the sniper pony, I slid out the serrated knife and crouched up towards my kill. An alert flashed on my pip-buck. Checking it, I discovered that it had labeled the gazebo in front of me. The Macintosh War Memorial. Alright. I'm going to just quickly switch over to another track here. I know that one took a bit of time, so things are going to start to come down here, I think. Alright. Curiosity pulled me closer. Careful of radigators, I neared enough to read the inscription beneath the statue through my binoculars. In honor of Big Macintosh, hero of the Battle of Shattered Hoof Ridge, and his noble sacrifice for all of Equestria. As I lowered my binoculars, I caught sight of something else. A concrete circle sticking up from the ground, roughly halfway between myself and the gazebo, with a pony hole cover. Remembering the night before, I turned my pip-buck back to the first radio broadcast on the list. From those damned apple trees up near the stable, and now he's terribly sick. Too sick to move. We've holed up in the cistern near the old memorial. We're running out of food and medical supplies. Please, if any pony hears this, help us. Message repeats. Pulling out the revolver, wary of radigators, I crept towards the cistern opening. I was almost there before one of the beasts charged at me, its huge maw opening to reveal rows on rows of razor-sharp teeth. I fired twice into its mouth. Horrifyingly, that wasn't enough to kill it, but it did make the beast think twice. The sound, however, brought more of them down on me. Abandoning the revolver in fright, I used my magic to pull open the pony hole and dived in, sliding the cover over behind me. In the wake of my anger, I was exhausted. In the aftermath of the library battle, my whole body ached from exertion. My nerves felt frayed from the content of adrenaline. Eating a bloat sprite skewer, I looked over the small underground chamber once more before curling up on the upper bunk of the pair of bunk beds built into the wall. I try not to think of the cult skeleton on the bed below me. The skeleton of his father was by the door. A sip from my canteen took the edge off my thirst. It was almost empty. I had to conserve. I reflected how, when I came back downstairs after dealing with the sniper pony, the zombie pony was already gone, and had taken the poor filly with her. I hoped it was to someplace safe. I found it strange that the most decent pony I'd found in the wasteland was already sort of dead. I also noticed that the assault rifle pony was also gone. He had waken up and freed himself from the crushing bookshelf. That meant there was at least one more raider still in the wastes, but I wasn't the sort of pony to kill some pony while they slept. Not even a raider. I figured that if I sleep here tonight, that would give the Radgators some time to wander away from the exit. If I was lucky, I would even spot where I dropped the revolver. Until then, I would preoccupy myself with my 2 new books. Slipping them out of my saddlebags, I looked the first one over. The one with my lost revolver on the cover, guns and bullets. Very straightforward. I set it aside for now. The second book, a gray tomb with a black pony's skull on the cover, was the real prize. Opening it to the first page, I began to read The Wasteland Survival Guide by Ditsy Doo. And Little Pip leveled up. Gets the new perk Bookworm. You pay much closer attention to the smaller details when reading. You gain 50% more skill points when reading books. I really like these footnotes. They're cute. So yeah, that was awesome. So stuff really popped off in this chapter. Man, I can't think anymore. I had to like really push through that second half of this chapter. So like she didn't really travel much. Like she's still in Ponyville, and she walked through like half way through Ponyville, only to go through that entire like combat sequence. Like not even 24 hours after she left the vault. Not even exploring Ponyville in its entirety. She already had to go through this entire like gun action sequence. Oh my god, that's horrendous. All right, but yeah, that was fun. Okay, I am too exhausted to keep going. I would love to keep going, actually, but not tonight. I was planning to come and do something else. I was considering like just going back to more Xenoblade, or maybe starting something new, or just doing something else entirely. But I did have this plan in mind for like a couple of weeks, so I'm like, all right, it's a good as time as any, I guess. So we did it. I don't know how many chapters in there are in this. So there are 40 no. There's 45 chapters plus an epilogue in the main story. And that was chapter 3. So we're like 1 out of 15 done or something. It's a long story. It's one that I don't mind actually going through. Oh no, this is going to be a struggle. It would be a struggle. That's what I was thinking, that this could be like a weekly thing. Like every weekend night, just chill, hang out, and read like a couple chapters, like just 2 chapters. It's longer than War and Peace. Yeah, this is like one of the longest fan fictions out there. It's insanely long. It's crazy how long it is. And the chapters that we read are very few in words. Like chapter 1 is like 3,000, then 5,000, then 7,000, and like the rest average to like twice, like more than twice than that. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. I'm like very much considering doing it. I don't know. If I'm ever in the mood to do it again, I'll just go back and do it again. I'm thinking of doing this like every week or so I don't get too exhausted. But yeah, I'll think about it. So yeah, that's Fallout Equestria. That is a very decent fanfic. It's a very popular fanfic. That fanfic sprouted like a big following in itself, a couple of games, a big following. It's crazy. And I thought it was like really fun. All right. So yeah, I am probably gonna go pass out and like kind of just like stare at a wall or something, because I'm like my eyes are like exhausted. And my mouth is like super exhausted. All right. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Um I'll come back soon. We'll do some more stuff. Until then, I will see everybody here later. Y'all take care. Have a good rest of your weekend. and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys. Thanks again, Tennis, for coming through. And yeah, take care, guys.